Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you might be. I'm privileged to share with you this presentation on the quaternary research in Kenya, building collaborations that favor knowledge and technology transfer. So I'm just going to highlight a few things that we are doing and how it plays a critical role in favoring technology transfer and knowledge transfer. Just to give you all that you are precaution matter, I speak with heavy Western Kenya accent. So in case there's anything that doesn't come out clearly, you don't understand, please, you can unmute yourself and ask me to repeat. But just the outline of this presentation, I will start by highlighting briefly why the quaternary matters. And then I'll discuss the context of quaternary research in Kenya, and then point out a few ongoing projects and how they foster technology, knowledge and technology transfer, and highlighting some of those projects. And then I'll also talk about the community collaboration in knowledge transfer. When we talk about collaboration in research, it's not only between researchers, but also how do you collaborate with communities, and also look at cross-disciplinary and multi-institutional collaborations and how all these come together in fostering knowledge and technology transfer, especially for research that is focusing specifically towards for the quaternary research. So, starting why the quaternary matters. The quaternary matters because it's within the quaternary that the trajectory to the present day cultural, biological, technological diversity took place during the quaternary. We know that this period had an extraordinary changes in global climate, cooling, which culminated in a series of step-like sudden climate changes over the last 2.5 million years ago. And it's within this time frame that we see, first of all, the inception of technology as characterized by simple stone flaking tools. Eventually, we have the extensive carrying of stones and of food at about 2 million years, and then pronounced elongation of the legs, therefore leading to bipedalism and people being to walk upright. Then initial advances in stone technology, getting more refined technology. And most importantly, there was also increase in brain size relative to more rapid increase in relative brain size as a result to increased technology and more efficient acquisition of tools or of resources. Eventually, we also have a evidence of controlling fire and building shelters. And this eventually also can lead to complex spatial mapping and resource exchange among different hominids. And also we have enhanced symbolic behavior, and which again going into the present increased cultural diversity and technological and cultural diversity. So within all these dynamics that are happening within the quaternary, in that essence, that's why the quaternary is really important. It's really important time frame because we know because we know that it's within this environment during the quaternary that the climate variability resulted in changes in environment and vegetation structure and composition, whereby leading to new ecosystems and environments opening up. And this improved hominids' different resource affordances. So there are different resources that are affordable at different environments, starting from the wooded coast forest, open savanna grasslands, and also shrubland. And as you remember, if you joined this discussion during our last time presenter spoke about the importance of phytoliths in reconstructing vegetation dynamics and resources over a long period of time. So it's working collaboratively again with colleagues. There's a lot of background noise. I don't know who is having some interference. Okay, thank you. So there are still the different environments that opened up and therefore providing different kind of resources. So, and also the Quaternary, again, in the dawn of technology, we have the old one technology getting more refined and being able to exploit different kind of resources, tools getting refined and different, being used to perform different tasks. We also have a longer transport and more reduction and later leading to smaller flex. So this kind of reducing the toolkit meant that the tool could be transported to greater distances, meaning new lands could be open or could be accessed that could not previously be accessed. And therefore, these new lands, therefore, in connection, having an efficient toolkit and being able to use these resources, efficient toolkit to access different resources, meant therefore that there was increased access to nutritional food such as meat, and therefore also reduced toolkit meant that there was an expansion of the home range, and therefore this advanced toolkit equal to also biological evolution, therefore meaning more improved brain size, more nutritious food come with it. So all these dynamics are happening within the Quaternary period. So, and that's why it matters. Eventually, with the fire, with the invention of fire, we are able actually to see a different early ancestors accessing different environments, being able to ward off predators, and they will be able to survive in cold environments and therefore move into different kind of world. So there's a lot of dynamics. So this trajectory that set in during the Quaternary is happening. All these dynamics are happening and taking place at this given time. And therefore, that's why the Quaternary matters. So eventually this culminated to the cultural diversity that we see in the later time frame, symbolic behavior associated by rock art, different kind of ceramic traditions, pastoralism setting in, modern Swahili civilizations, and most importantly, trade, cross-continental trade among the long distance trade in the Far East and other regions, more complex mega structures such as the Timli Chohinga, Great Zimbabwe, all these dynamics, and all those culminating during the Quaternary. And all this again is what has culminated the present day cultural and biological diversity. And I believe that you'll all agree with me that without diversity, life will be indeed very boring. So what was the context like of the Quaternary research in Kenya, for example? So initially, the research actually was done by mainly foreign researchers, and research was done under very difficult circumstances. One, because of lack of resources, poor infrastructure, poor roads. Sometimes you had to drive in your little Land Rover and you'll break down occasionally, and you have to fix it on the side of the road for you to be able to get where you're going. And some of these early researchers mainly focusing on the Quaternary. We have, of course, the Leakeys, David Phillipson, Larry Robbins, among others that I cannot mention all of them here. But the most important thing is that they set that pace for research, for Quaternary research in Kenya, undertaking large scale, some of them are undertaking large scale excavation in very remote areas that actually were difficult to access, difficult to work in, living in with just basic infrastructure. But this context actually of doing research in this kind meant that there was also little interaction with the local communities, or the role of the local communities or the local indigenous Kenyans taking part was mainly reduced to playing supportive roles. They're either acting as just manual laborers to do things, cooks, carrying things and that kind of stuff, because they lacked the technology or they lacked the knowledge to be able to undertake that. And because of the environment that was happening. And this was not made any better by the insecurity brought about by some socio-cultural practices such as cattle rustling, which meant that the environment which you're operating was very tough and therefore did not foster that environment of knowledge transfer and technology transfer. It was not until later actually that researchers are now were trained and they acquired that knowledge by these foreign, a few researchers are trained by these foreign institutes, eventually came in and started also mentoring other students, and this actually in different fields has culminated to a very vibrant network of researchers or colleagues within the mainly focusing their research in quaternary, and in essence, we have even now professional associations that are mainly focused in East Africa. For example, the East Africa Quaternary Association is a very vibrant organization. The East Africa Association of Anthropology and Paleoanthropology is very vibrant in the region. So all these actually organizations are happening, all these networks are happening because of the training that are able to, the early researchers who have gotten, mentor others, and eventually this now becoming a good network of early career researchers that are establishing themselves, and also others that are coming slowly by slowly. So all these dynamics is what is happening within the Kenyan context. Let me now just talk briefly about the different kind of projects that we are undertaking and how they play a role in fostering knowledge and technology transfer. One of these projects that we are doing is called Coupled Natural and Human Systems in Turkana Basin. And mainly we look at intersection between land use, globalization, and pastoral ways of life, and how they are directly relevant to the coupling of socioeconomic systems with the relevant world. Land use and economic variability may have direct impacts on health, nutrition, and stress. And pastoral communities, therefore, through food and stress and pastoral communities through food and water supply. So for this project, we investigate the main question that we felt, what are the long-term consequences of changes in land use patterns in environments that pastoralists live in and or have lived in, and how will this affect the health and nutrition of these communities? While some of these details have been studied elsewhere, but we feel that the long-term approach provides a good way of integrating archaeological, historical, ethnographic, health and health data within a generative modeling, so that we can be able to understand the dynamics, influences, and outcomes of the results from land use changes and environmental variation in semi-arid landscapes. So that is the project that we are undertaking, and we look at how frequent residential movements increases the land cover, whether it decreases or it decreases the land cover heterogeneity, and increases the land cover heterogeneity, and also creating ecological hotspots, which are a good thing. And this is how the natural system also plays to feed into the human system plays to feed into the natural system, and the natural system therefore feed into the human system. So that is one of the projects we are implementing, and it's a collaborative project, and working with different institutions and groups. One of them, Kenya Medical Research Institute, Duke University, County Government of Marsabit, NMK, Penn State University, and George Washington University. So all these are groups that are coming together, working to understanding the dynamics of the long-term goal, or understand the long-term changes. And among the aspect that we look at is how we can be able to understand the impacts of abandoned homesteads, how these pastoralists creating their homesteads across the landscape actually plays a critical role in creating heterogeneous systems, because we believe that by doing so, we are able to provide students also with different systems, how they can be able to understand the different system scenarios, and doing hands-on themselves, these on the ground, and eventually be able to understand system connections, understand what the short-term effects would be on the system, and over the course of they can be able to understand how the long-term system understands, and ultimately how those what are the potential tipping points and resilient system of these communities. So that is one of the projects that we are doing and fostering. So another project is also we go underground in order to understand the cave elephants and the early humans in Mt Elgon. And here we look at the cultural heritage, both past and present, understand the elephant geophagia and threats and threats to conservation within the mountain. And for this project, we collaborate with the Kenya Wildlife Service, Kenya Forest Service, the National Museums of Kenya, Elephant Crisis Fund, and the East African Wildlife Society. So these are some of the specific goals is to understand the cultural heritage of the area, and therefore we're going to take excavations, because we know that actually Mt Elgon is penetrated by very different by caves, numerous caves at different ecological zones. And I see Dr. Olaga is in the audience, and okay, she has done extensive work in mapping those caves in Mt Elgon and their different locations. So she'll agree with me that the mountain has a lot of caves at different ecological gradients, and these caves are actually inhabited by humans. Both were used in the past by humans, and some are used by elephants. And even at the present day, there are caves that still be used by humans. And even more recently, into historical times, there are caves that were still used by humans. That I remember actually when I was a young kid, people living in those caves and visiting them in those caves. So this has provided long-term history on how people are using. So the technology that we're using here also is, again, as we go underground, is to monitor elephants. We call it monitor elephant. And we use smart tracking technology, smart tracker, which is a spatial monitoring tool that we can be able to understand mapping for community forests, elephant routes, and potential hotspots for elephants interaction. We are hoping that actually we can build this into a more robust study to understand how the elephants use the landscape, and also the different vegetation and why they go underground to use this salt. So that's the elephant geophagia aspect. But more importantly, we also undertake mapping of all the land use, land cover changes across the mountain and over time. And so we can understand what are the changes, what are the potential areas, because we know because of the current land use practices in the forest, which is called a PELI system, which is people plantations and livelihoods. It actually, we would like to be able to know understand the different routes where these elephants are using, and also so that when the Kenya Forest Service is planning its dissemination of the land for PELI system, they can be able to understand, they know to allocate areas that are actually used as elephant corridors, because in so doing, they can avoid the conflict of elephants actually raiding people's crops and people trying to chase them away, and eventually leading to conflict and people being killed or people killing elephants. So that is actually one of the goal, and we use smart tracker technology to be able to do this. And one of the important things that comes out here because of the technology transfer, that we were able to have all the technology here in Kenya, and all the phones, the gadgets that are used to collect the data out in the field way before COVID. So for us, when COVID came, actually, we were COVID ready, and the data collection continued during the lockdown, and we were able to collect the data non-interrupted, because the scouts will collect the data in the field and map it and send it back remotely to Nairobi, when the server can be mapped, and issues actually, whether of conservation, security, or scientific issue, can be noted and be acted upon accordingly. So for this project, we feel that this high elevation of Mt Elgon actually are significant. These high elevation settings, not only in Elgon, but also even in East Africa in general, are important in helping establishing the region's cultural chronology, which can be compared with other better studied areas. For example, the floor of the Rift Valley. And in essence, it can contribute to a long-term environmental record of this area. And evidence, we can also beginning to see evidence of the role of indigenous foragers in the origin of food production in sub-Saharan Africa or East Africa. So it's very critical that we understand the role of these high elevation refuges, especially in the context of climate change. How are they significant? So that is the role, that is the objective of this project. And another project is documenting rock art and which is an African legacy in the Turkana Basin. And this is the collaboration between NMK, University La Sapienza in Rome, and the Italian Cultural Institute, and supported by Italian Embassy. And here, we are very keen, we document the rock art sites in the southeastern part of the lake. And luckily, it's very resource area, very rich, and there are a lot of sites that have not been previously been documented. And by working there, we know that there is a lot of rock art that has not been documented, and we work with different people to be able to document this rock art and use it to inform us about the cultural change and the long-run resilience of these communities. So that is the project we are doing with the University La Sapienza in Rome. And again, working very closely with local Kenyan students and also even students again from Italy. So it's a collaborative effort that actually promotes knowledge and technological transfer. Another collaboration example is what we are doing with the Max Planck, the collaboration between National Museums of Kenya and the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History at Jena. And here initially we had a training of where we had 3 actually scientists from NMK visit Jena, and we were able to learn for some period of time about the different analytical skills that are happening, different technologies that they deploy, and that actually being able to understand that and come back with that knowledge to be able to deploy it in Kenya. So when we started our excavation in Kakapel, just in the foots of Mt Elgon, as I say it again, we are very keen at understanding the different land use patterns or different cultural changes or human adaptations at the different ecological gradients going up the mountain. So for Kakapel actually is a rock shelter and the base of Mt Elgon in Western Kenya. And we actually documented evidence of the longest sequence of pottery using foragers in Eastern Africa. And we know that the stratigraphic layers are overlain by the sequence of the iron working. And this actually goes into the historical period, in the historical time. So the program using high resolution mapping, carbon dating, and extensive flotation, and bioarchaeological recovery and ancient DNA has given us a unique insight into the introduction and evolution of food producing libraries in Eastern Africa. And therefore, from this data, we can be able to indicate the subsistence changes over the last several thousands of years, which is characterized by gradual integration of local hunter-gathering and traditions. So in that context, we find that very interesting actually to look at it from understanding the role of local hunter-gatherers in the advent of food production. And again, bringing together different techniques, different disciplines that we can be able to all work together towards that specific goal. And those are the excavations that we have been able to undertake. Another very important site that is actually we've been working on with the Max Planck Institute of the Science of Human History and is the Pangaya Saidi cave in Kilifi. And here we have undertaken excavation and with a specific goal of understanding what is the role of the coastal ecosystem in response to climatic variability, and which has not fully understood. And the role of these stable coastal environments in this process has not been studied because most of the people who have done research in Kenya focusing in the coastal region has mainly been understanding the Swahili civilization and coastal maritime trade, all that, but they did not have actually researchers focusing in the long-term history of and the role of this stable forest within the coastal belt. So therefore, this actually area provides us a new insight into adaptations within the Indian Ocean coastal forest biome, because the area is very forested, as you can see from one of the photos. On this photo is actually very densely forested limestone caves within the area. So therefore, we see actually these coastal zones reflect a more stable land use practices in more long term and less residential mobility compared to other areas. So it is in the framework of understanding human environmental dynamics, but going deep into time. So that is actually, and again, here working very closely with students and be able to train them, not only data collection and data collection, both in the field and in the lab. So when the pandemic came, and people, restriction in travel, they cannot be able to collect your data in time or as in schedule as you scheduled. Working within this project, we are able actually to continue with the students that we're working with to continue data acquisition in the lab, of course, in a safe environment, and therefore building resilience in this pandemic. And in this way, we are collecting data. Our data collection is ongoing at the moment. And in essence, we are able now to be able to continue with everyone, be able to share knowledge, and researchers who cannot travel in Kenya or outside Kenya can be able to get their data because of the knowledge transfer and the technology transfer that is here. So it is in that context, actually, we find that very important. Now, I've talked about collaborations and the interaction between researchers and research institutions, but there is actually another level of collaborations actually that I think is very, very important, is collaborating with the communities, which as part of the knowledge and technology transfer. So in areas, in most times when researchers do research, when they do research, wherever they do, they want, communities are more or less relegated the zone of providing labor or certain kind of means supporting roles, but not necessarily as equal partner collaborators. And in that context, the communities are not able to provide the knowledge, but there's a lot of knowledge actually, both that we can be able to learn from the community. And that's right. And in the same context, I'll go back to it shortly, is how can the community also be able to learn, to benefit from the gains of research? How do researchers focusing on quaternary research transfer that knowledge to the local communities and make it useful to the community? And in essence, it also enable them to learn from the community. Being involving communities in this kind of collaboration, especially in the aspect of research or heritage conservation, in different aspects actually, we feel that it's important because it not only boosts awareness of this heritage, but also injects pride in natural and cultural heritage, and enables also the community to be hands-on in promoting what they see as unique in terms of developing appropriate livelihood strategy, especially when they share the socioeconomic benefits that accrue from these resources. So in that context, actually, it's very important to collaborate with the local communities. So let me show you here one example of actually how much you can learn from the community. This dirty and greasy piece of cardboard box actually is a formidable example of how much you can gain by engaging the local communities in different aspects. One of the areas that we're working in Turkana South, we were able to explain to the community and show them pictures of what we were looking for, which is rock art. And this young man went out with his with this piece of cardboard, and you were able to document or illustrate the kind of rock art that you were seeing. Of course, he didn't have a GPS with him to let the GPS coordinates, but of course, being able to know the landscape, he was able to take us back there and all this knowledge. So Again, this is now one example of the formidable example of how you can benefit as a researcher by collaborating, especially for coronary research, collaborating with communities on what they do. And in essence, the communities can also benefit by also integrating other aspects in the rock art, so that rock art can also be used as a rewarding efforts of events, which is for the cultural festivals, among others, that they can be able to undertaken by the community, or even create awareness among school children and media and other areas on about this importance of research and going, and inject also like stimulate curiosity among school children to take careers in paleo sciences or quaternary research focused careers. So this is some of the things that actually that collaborating with communities, the benefits that actually to accrue by collaborating with communities. And also in terms of not in the context of economic gain, it's important that you also understand that actually by collaborating with communities, you're not only fostering knowledge and technology transfer, you can also transform the livelihood of these people by looking at various ways in which opportunities can be gained. For example, for promoting cultural tourism within this area, or even providing livelihood by entrepreneurship or using as materials that are heritage inspiring. And all these are actually things that emerge in science, that are coming out of science and being fed into the community if you collaborate with the community and be able to provide very nice heritage inspired merchandise, and in essence, make a livelihood out of the whole thing. So all these are actually some of the things that you can benefit by collaborating in the community. But at a broader level, and even more consistent level, is also using the knowledge that you have gained from research to build, to use that as a rallying point for overcoming inter-community violence and conflict, so that actually you use the rock art as a rallying point for unity, as opposed to something to divide the people. And actually some countries have done this very well. Uganda has the rock art as kind of a heritage in their currency. South Africa has it in their coat of arms. So all these are actually things that can be used to rally the point. But this only comes actually if there is a proper collaboration, not only even going beyond the community and now going to the policymakers at national level, so that they are also knowing what is happening and gaining what benefits are available from research. Another level of collaboration is also with the development companies or development partners, people who there's a lot of activity like focusing either in dam construction, road construction, extracting energy, wind power, oil exploration, among others, all going on, in some of them actually happening in culturally sensitive landscapes. And therefore, if we build collaboration with these developers actually in good time and able to have good collaborations with them, we are actually able to be able to gain as researchers. So now from a research point of view, having something, for example, like document sites, or first of all, access areas that you not otherwise access or have the budget. And two, collect data from areas that you not otherwise have collected. And this is just one of the slides. I put a slide of just one of the many data that we're able to collect from NMK and Tullow collaboration during the seismic survey in block 12A. 12A is in Baringo, Marakwet boundary, just in the Kerio Valley region. And we're able to document very beautiful sites, diversity of sites in areas that will not otherwise have been able to access. And in essence, actually the developers are also keen to see how they can use that data to advance their endeavor. And one of them is the electrical wind power, which actually approach NMK to help them develop a cultural center within their property, within the substation. So so that they can be integrated. They are very beautiful rock art actually within the substation. And they like to have like a cultural center that incorporates those things. So if you come to visit their offices, you can go through the information center, cultural center, not only integrating the cultural heritage alone, but something that's more resilient and building into the modern day technology. They can see how it's been the past, how the cultures change, and into the modern needs of wind power technology and how that moves along. So all those are the benefits and how it's important actually to collaborate with these developers. So that is a different level of collaboration only. So it's not only research focused, but also institutional focus. So again, building on technology transfer, we're having also another challenge that we had in the past was having equipment that keeps being taken back and forth the oceans and or do different the airports because of this. But if you work actually being able to have all those equipment in a collaborating countries and build a collaboration that brings technology, equipment back to them, to where research, to the field site where research is doing, for example, the GIS and mapping technology, water quality testing equipment. Is very important because it is when we had this data, we had this equipment, for example, here in Kenya, NMK researchers actually, we were able to undertake, do research resilience, build a research resilience during the pandemic. And more recently, we were able actually not only contribute to COVID prevention at one of the clinic at our research sites, but we are also able to undertake data collection in one of the areas that we are able to go in, because all the technology was here. We didn't have to wait for it, like, oh, we can't do this research because there's nobody, our colleagues are not here, and therefore we cannot build research. We cannot be able to undertake this kind of research. So this cross-institutional, cross-disciplinary and multi-institutional collaborations, therefore, are critical in building infrastructure that support institutions also, not only institutions at a regional level. So for example, if there's equipment that can be used by different institutions within Nairobi or within East Africa region, that is the kind of collaboration that can favor knowledge and technology transfer. And this collaboration and knowledge transfer actually is critical and is part of our ongoing project that we are doing in providing environmental and understand the different lifestyle and mobility patterns. So in a very broad way, those are the kind of the collaborations that we are building. We're able to work with different institutions and different communities, different partners, bringing together different players and be able to have this knowledge together for the benefit of promoting research, social cohesion, promoting livelihoods, all touching in a different aspect of life. So, and for that all, I thank you all. Asante sana.